Hi everybody, this is Nightmare on Scam Street. I'll be starting in about 5 minutes. Just got a couple of things to clear up and trying to get the fans sorted out because it's so hot here. Okay, I'm ready to kick off. So, this is Nightmare on Scam Street, and I've recently been working very hard with the Microsoft FS 2020, Flight Simulator 2020, and the Fenix A320 aircraft. Now, the Fenix A320 is one of the most realistic simulator aircraft I've seen. Many of the top pilots who fly in real life like to use the Fenix A320 model because that's what they fly for real. So at the moment, we're parked at London Stansted and we're in a condition called cold and dark. The airplane is actually shot down, and the job I have to do first is to get the plane started up. Now, it's not a difficult sequence because there's a system to running through the startup. So we need to get the camera on so I can get the views right. Cockpit, I'm going to go for instrument, and then we're going to go for overhead. This is the overhead panel. The left hand side is mostly about navigation. The middle is about fuel tanks, fuel pumps, signals and lights, and the right hand side is about the cargo holds. Now, when starting up the aircraft, you need to first of all check the batteries are within spec. But before I do that, if anybody is watching, could you just drop a comment or something just to say you can hear me okay? This is a trial for me. I've not really done the live stream properly yet. I'll just carry on. I think I'm streaming audio okay. It says so on OBS anyway. Okay, so we need to check that the batteries are okay. And the problem is easy enough to do. There's some reverse logic here though. They don't say that they're switched off. That's because there's no power to show you that they're switched off. So if we start on battery 1 and click that one on, you'll see that battery 2 illuminates as off, which is because now there's power to illuminate the button. It's as simple as that. So we turn both batteries on, and that will start up some of the systems in the aircraft, but we need some proper power, and because we're parked at a stand with no engines running, we can use the external power, which I'll show you is a generator that sits beside the aircraft. That's the generator there. It's just a generator that gives the aircraft power. So we can turn that on, but first of all we've got to check a couple of things. We've got to check that the wipers are switched off, because if you start the wipers on a dry windscreen, it can cause all sorts of problems. We also want to check that the brakes on. Oops, no, cockpit, and we want to go to pedestal. I want to check that the brake is on. Check that the throttles are in idle. And once we've done that, then we can actually go ahead and start energize the power. you'll see quite a few things come on. All of these white lights are things that are off. Now the A320s or the Airbus series use a lights off system of being healthy. For example, this button here is energizing the oxygen supply for the crew. It's letting them, it's allowing the oxygen supply to be used. The reason it's switched off is to prevent slow leaks. So we want to press that button, and now it's gone off. It's gone away, which is great. As we go up through our sequence, this is the voice recorder, and we need to turn it on and then test it by pressing the CVR test button, and it'll make a beep. That beep tells us that the system is recording, because by law we have to record all the conversations in the flight deck before we get started up. These three switches up here are for the guidance system. You'd think that you could just switch them on one after the other, but by system we use is to switch on the pilots, the first officers, and then the reserve. So it's 1, 3, 2. You'll notice the fault light comes up, but goes away fairly quickly. As we're going to start getting passengers on board, we want to come down this end now, down to the bottom of the overhead panel. We want to arm the emergency exit lights, and we want to put the no smoking lights in auto. But we have to leave the seatbelt lights off, because we will be fueling. We can't have the seatbelt lights on while we're fueling. Now we're going to switch to the EFB. This is the captain's control pad. I'm going to select the Fenix app, and we're going to import our flight from SimBrief. Before I started streaming, I'd actually generated a flight in SimBrief for EGSS, which is Stansted, down to LFPG, which is Charles de Gaulle. Because of time differences, we can actually edit the time. We want it to get about 30 minutes or so to give us time to get going. So I'll change that to 12:20 or something like that. 12 o'clock, let's see what that does. Plus 34, I did that wrong. So edit to get in at 1300. Update. Right, so we've got minus 26 minutes before we are due to set off. For ground services, we know we've got the external power supply. The chocks and cones are pretty standard. But what we're going to do is go to this mass and balance chart now and click on load aircraft. We've got two options or three options. We can either do it instantly, we can do it quickly, or we can do it in the real time, which is 27 minutes. My preference is to do it in fast time. It's fairly quick, but it's still annoyingly slow. So up here you can see the number of passengers that are planned, and that's the number of passengers that have got on board the plane. We also see that we've got doors open. We've got the cargo door forward and aft. We've got the bulk, which is actually the fuel. We should put the forward stairs on because we're not at a gated. We're not at a stand that's got an airway with it. So that's letting us fill up the plane, go to mass and balance again, and you'll see that we've got that. Next thing I'm going to do is go to the MCDU, which I call the MCDU. I'm sure other people have another name for it. And we've got to initialize that. We do an initial request, init request, and that takes information from the data channels, and it pops in details like that. I'm going to show you how we do all these. I'm going to put my flight number, NOS5. Now we've got two pieces of information here which we can get fairly quickly: cost index and cruise height. Mostly the yellow boxes are the ones that need filling in. To get those, we can go to the EFB again and go to the the navigation. Click that, and here we get our flight plan, and it tells us that the CI, or cost index, is 39. We're going to have a cruise height. Now, I haven't found an easier way to do this, but what I do is scroll down to the actual flight itself. And here we are, we'll see that flight level 23, 108, 237, 240, 240, 250, 250. Looks like 250 is the highest height we'll go to, so our cruise height is 250. Right now I'm just writing these down. If we go back to the McDo, we can enter those now. The cost index we said was 39. And the cruise height was 250. So that's that page completed. We can put the wind in. Now what this does is it gets the wind at different altitudes and populates it for all the different aspects of the flight. So this is climb wind. The next part of it, we need some new numbers. Yeah, that's a good question. I am starting a video now on the investigation side of things, but it's taking a little bit of working on. It's something I love doing. I had to stop doing YouTube for a little while for lots of different reasons. But yes, I'm going to follow up on our friend who was in a lot of the videos I did already, because he's still out and about. And there's some new videos I'm doing which are going to be quite interesting. So yes, don't worry about being off topic. I really, really don't mind. I'm glad that you're watching. Right, so zero fuel weight and that and block, we get that from the EFB again, but we'll only get that when it's finished loading. And the reason is loading is variable. If you look at this little blob here, this is the center of gravity, and as more people come on and fuel comes on and cargo comes on, it moves like it did just then. So you can't get the final weight and center of gravity, but what we can get is the fuel. So it's saying that they plan to put 5.8 tons in, and they put 5.8. So our fuel for this trip is 5.8. You just do it in tons. We're waiting still for the loading to finish. This won't take very long now. There's nothing much else I can do. Oh, I know where to go. Right, we'll do this on the McDo. We'll go to the actual flight plan itself. This is something I've done before we got here. EGSS is London Stansted, and we have to set a departure. And we're going to be departing by runway 22. And we're going to be using the SID, Standard Instrument Departure, Det 1R. My system said Det 2R, but that's a problem with not having up-to-date maps. And you press insert and that puts it in. And we scroll up through the flight plan. We'll see there's a discontinuity there which we'll have to get rid of. We keep going up until we reach LFPG, which is Charles de Gaulle, and we're going to be arriving runway 26 left, ILS 26 left, and we're going to be using BIBA 9P, BIBA 9P, as our star, which is the standard instrument approach, and we insert that. What we need to do now is find out why we have that discrepancy, that flight plan discontinuity. We can do that. Actually, you have to be a bit awkward with this because it's hard to get both on at the same time. This is our flight plan. If we go to plan on there, we can just about get the McDo in at the same time, and we can start at the beginning of the flight plan, and you'll see it moving through, and that's det, that's where it disappears. So let's change the scale, and we'll see that det and lid are actually in a line, so I should be able to get rid of that discontinuity. I just need to get this to clear and get rid of that, and then accept it. Now you see that our flight plan is now a bit wiggly, but it's still okay. So that flight plan takes us all the way down to Charles de Gaulle. And the entry into Charles de Gaulle comes in from the west, and then you turn around. Let's go back to our EFB and see if we've boarding is complete. That's great. So now what we need to find, the information we want to find now is zero fuel weight, which is here, which is 61.0. We never round these up or down. This I just call the CG. It's the zero fuel weight center of gravity percent or something like that, and that's 31.2. We'll need that information. With those bits of information, we can go to our takeoff configuration. So we're leaving via runway 22. Surface is dry. We're going to have the flaps of 1. We're not going to be using toga. The packs are going to stay on. I never turned the air conditioning off. Takeoff weight and the other information is included automatically when you synchronize that. Press that to synchronize the weather and calculate. This is going to give us some values called V1, VR, V2. V1 is the speed after which you cannot stop on the runway. So if you're trundling down the runway and something goes wrong and you're doing 140 knots, you can, given the length of the runway and the amount of braking you have, still manage to stop. After that, after V1, you have to take off. You simply will not have enough runway left. I usually write down the things like the flaps, which is 1/down 0.2, the flex, which is the length, the temperature which you can take the flex up to, and the accelerations as well, which is 1350. Now we've got these numbers, we're ready to go back to the McDo again. and put them in. So if we go to init, second page of init, we've got 0 fuel weight and now 0 fuel weight CG, and that's 61.0 slash 31.2, which we recorded earlier. That goes up there. And our block, our fuel, said was 5.8. What happens now is it'll calculate all the different weights and things like that. There we go. It's calculated the trip time, the amount of fuel, what we're taking off at, what we're landing at, and what extra time we have available to us in case we have a missed landing. So we've actually done both init pages. So we can go onto the performance page now, and we can put in the V1 and V2 and VR numbers. So V1 was 145, VR was 145, and it's quite common to have these both the same. V2 was 147. Flaps we said was 1/D and 0.2, and flex temp was 59. I'm not going to spend time explaining what all these things are because this would make it a very long video. I'll do it in little bits later. Now we put the acceleration in. This is given the weather, the air pressure, temperature, moisture and everything else, how much acceleration you can expect to get out of the engines at full power, and also if one engine's out, what could happen, because you could have an engine failure before we actually landed. You need to go and do one more thing is to put in the landing details. We can get that from the EFB again. I'll go to my flight, and then here we've got the weather details, our arrival, and it's telling us that the QNH at arrival is 1007, the temperature is 23, and the wind is 210/11. So it's 210 degrees, 11 knots. So we can actually put that in the McDo. You might not believe it, for every flight I do, I use about half a page of foolscap. So QNH is 1007. And that's what it is now. When we get there, they'll probably tell us something else, but we can listen for that. And the wind is 210/11, 210/11. What I put in here, this is like the final decision height. I'm going to make that 200 because I think the weather's fairly good.
100 above, minimum.
And that's it. The next phase of that is go around, so we're okay. So we've got our flight plan, we have our passengers on board, we have everything we need. What we can do now is put the seatbelt sign on, and we need to come off of the external power. So what we're going to do now is start up the APU, auxiliary power unit. If you've ever been on a two-engined jet plane and you've gone round near the back for whatever reason, and you hear this horrible loud whistly noise or hissy noise, that's another actual jet engine that's in the back of the plane, which is being used to generate electrical power and hydraulic power. And as it says, it's the auxiliary power unit. We're actually going to be using that to start the main engines. we can turn on our fuel pumps now because we're filled up with fuel. We'll go to our display unit, and this will tell us how close the APU is to being ready to use. It's available. That's great. So what we can do now, I keep trying to do it in one step, is turn off the external power. And if we go to the EFB, we go to ground services, we can disconnect the ground power unit and the chocks and cones. Now, this has stumps lots of people. If you forget to turn off the chocks and cones, you can put as much power as you like on the engines and you'll get nowhere. So we're going to be using Vatsim, and I think I probably still will. So Vatsim is a system that works just like a real air control system, air traffic control, although it can't seem to connect for some reason. Oh, there we go, we're in. So what we're hoping to see here, once it's loaded everything up, we've got EGSS ground, they'll give us clearance. They're on 121.725. So we go to pedestal, and we set this to 121.725. I'll give them a call. Stansted ground, this is November Oscar Sierra 5, type A320, requesting ILS clearance to Paris Charles De Gaul as filed.
Moon Class 5, Stansted ground, good afternoon, stand by on us route.
Standing by, NOS 5. What the chap's doing now, he's looking at the flight plan that I filed previously in another piece of software, and he's checking it's a valid flight plan, that everything's okay, and then he'll give me clearance for it. He might make changes, so I've got to listen out for that. He'll also tell me his squawk code and an initial height. Here's the this generates the squawk code, and it's also a traffic alert. Tells you if there's an aircraft too close to you. Once I've got clearance for the flight, I can start up the engines. In the meantime, I'm going to put this on. This is called APU bleed. This is going to push air through the air conditioning of the cabin. So if I show you the conditioning, it's getting quite hot. It's 33 degrees at the back of the plane right now. We don't really want our passengers to be that hot, so we can turn that down so it's a bit cooler. Should be able to hear the sound coming up now, the hiss of the air. So while we're waiting, we can also test the fire alarm system. Press and hold. Press and hold the test button. And there's a smoke test for the cargo area there. We need to put our beacon on because we're going to be going engine on soon.
And Moonflower 5, I have your clearance when ready.
NOS 5 standing by for clearance.
Moonflower 5, you are cleared to Paris Charles De Gaul on the Detling to Delta departure, routing to Detling, then the Mike 604 airway to Lid, then as filed, runway 04, squawk 5416.
Cleared as planned to Det to our departure. Did you say runway 04? Go ahead.
Yes, runway 04.
Okay, so it's runway 04, and then as planned. Thank you very much.
Moonflower 5, just to confirm, it's the Detling to Delta departure, then the routing to Detling, then the Mike 604 airway to Lid, then as filed.
My apologies. So it's the Mike 604 and the airway to Lid, then as filed. And you gave me a squawk of...
Squawk 5416.
It's on the other side of the page. 5416. Thanks very much. It's November Oscar Sierra 5.
Moonflower 5, feedback is correct. Current information is Papa QNH 1016.
NOS 05, permission to start pushback.
Moonflower 5, squawk 5416.
You keep getting told off if you forget to do things. I forgot to put the squawk in. Without that, he won't know where I am. I set these as such. Set that on.
Moonflower 5, thanks. I'm also going to need an odd flight level for you. Would you like flight level 230 or flight level 250?
I'd plan 250 if that's okay. NOS 5.
Moonflower 5, no problems. Thank you for your final flight will be 250 and push and start is approved.
Push and start up approved, NOS 5. Stansted ground, NOS 5. There's no tug available. I need to push back using my reverse thrusters.
Not a problem.
So, because there's no tug available, normally we'd have a tug which would come and push us, get us into the position we want to be. So what I'm going to have to do now is actually start the engines in its position that we're in. So we need to put that to start all the way, and we can start engine 1. And if we go to our
EZ522, we're on the Bravo stands requesting taxi.
EZ522, thanks. Taxi Juliet and Lima to holding point Lima 1.
Juliet Lima, holding point Lima 1. That's EZ522.
right, we'll see that the pressure's increasing, the oil level's fine. Up here we'll see the N1 is the speed of the inside turbine, and this is the engine exhaust gas temperature. And that clonk means that engine number 1 is available. If we look on the electrical page, we'll see that engine 1 is now generating power. So let's go and start engine 2. The realism factor of this system is that you also get...
And all stations, Stansted ground is now closed. Contact Stansted radar on 120.625. Bye-bye.
Stansted ground, did you say to go to 120.625?
Correct. Stansted ground is now closed. Contact.
Okay, thank you. Have a great day. So we've got received messages here. We've got load sheets which are prepared by the loadmaster, and you have to accept them. Then you can go back, and then there's another load sheet which you have to accept.
All stations still on this frequency. Contact Stansted radar 120.625. Bye-bye.
And it looks like there's a "why are you late" message. That's another load sheet, so we can accept that. So we've got all our details out of the way. We've got our engines running. So the next step is to actually get rid of that. We want to go back overhead and turn off the APU, because we don't want to be trying to force air back into the APU now that both engines are running. And believe it or not, we're actually ready to go. So what we're going to have to do, we're going to have to change our flight plan as well. Clearly we're going to have to reverse around that way and then drive up there to the runway, to the taxiways. But we've been given a change of runway. I'd planned for runway 22, and he's given us runway 04. So if we go there, departure, we're now going 04, and we're going to det 2R. Oh. Right, anybody watching on the live stream, I apologise. Microsoft Flight Sim has just decided to crash. Don't know why. It happened earlier. It crashed halfway through a flight to Geneva. So if you've been watching, many apologies. And what can I say? Gonna be kicking myself because that is a desperate loss. I'm gonna have to go and find out why it crashed. So anybody who's watching, like Rick, and I'm gonna be ending the stream just now. And once again, my sincere apologies for the crash of the aircraft there, or the flight sim. Nothing I can do about it right now. I'm going to have a look at why it happened. But in the meantime, thank you for watching. and I'll be back on sometime again very soon. So thank you for watching. See you later. This is Nightmare on Scam Street on NightmAirlines.